Hi there! In this video, I'll discuss how we can go about this whole revolution thing, mostly as a primer to new leftists, but it also might be useful for those that have been around for a while as well. This will be timestamped, so feel free to jump around if you'd like. Let's get started. 1. Why do we want revolution? This is a relatively simple question that can be answered with many volumes, but I'll keep it simple. Capitalism is an untenable and unstable system built on the inherent injustice of market allocation, as well as the destruction of the environment and commodification of everything around us. It hurts us, the planet, and pretty much just about anything else. A deeper introductory analysis of capitalism and its faults can be found in an earlier video I made here. Only through revolution, the overthrow of one class, the ruling class, by another class, the working class, can we finally escape the endless boom and bust cycles, the crises of overproduction, and the ruin of our common earth. The system that will overtake and supersede capitalism is socialism, in which the market is done away with, the means of production are democratically managed, and the state machinery, in the hands of the working class, is made to work for the working class and society as a whole. For a deeper introductory dive into socialism and its inherent superiority over capitalism, take a look at this video I made here. Now that's all well and good, but how do we go about this whole revolution thing, exactly? 2. The approach to revolution. As much as you and I would love to just flip a switch to achieve our goals, sadly the real world is different. Only tireless work towards revolution and the appropriate material conditions can result in a situation that could possibly lead to the overthrow of capitalism. What exactly does this tireless work look like, though? Simple. The building of organizations, education, direct action, mutual aid, applying the mass line, and ceaseless agitation, amongst other things. All of this will be touched on soon. Let's take this one by one. What's this about building organizations? 3. Building organizations and their importance. Human beings are a cooperative species. We rarely work alone, and anything worth doing requires collective efforts of the masses of people from their various walks of life. It goes without saying that anything you can do on your own can be done more quickly, efficiently, and cleanly by a dedicated organization, and politics is no different. Now, what forms of organizations are we talking about, exactly? Well, that's up to the material conditions of your region and the requirements of your community. Having an appropriate materialist analysis is of prime importance. These organizations can be political parties, or women's groups, or student unions, or even standard workers' unions, amongst many other things. The point being, though, is that nothing can be accomplished without the proper organizations being in place. History has proven that organic mobilization, where people spontaneously mobilize, is at best easily fragmented and crushed, or at worst non-existent. Organizations exist to lay the groundwork for that crucial moment, or at least to nudge it along. Once it comes around, though, there is some ready-made infrastructure with an appropriate analysis, the people's trust, and a detailed plan of action at hand. Now, the boring organizational aspects of these groups, too, depend on the material conditions. At times, a highly centralized leadership is necessary. At others, a decentralized umbrella organization with numerous streams of leadership, but nonetheless a single goal. Leadership is fluid, sometimes centralized, sometimes running through multiple streams, depending on the material conditions. There isn't just one answer at all times. Under capitalism, the issues people face, from exploitation to the unjust distribution of resources according to profit rather than need, is painted as moral failings of individuals, rather than systemic defects that need to be, and definitely can be, corrected. In an organization, those that take part, as well as those that directly benefit from the work these groups do, help people develop an appropriate and correct analysis of the situation and the undeniable failings of the capitalist system. In essence, organizations are the key to and school of liberation. To summarize, the point of organizations and their purpose is twofold. Firstly, to directly aid our communities, and in doing so broadcast the failures of the capitalist system, and secondly, to build a preliminary form of dual power and equip the people with the necessary tools so that, in that crucial moment, we can properly take advantage and win our liberation. 4. Education and its importance. Now, what of education? This doesn't mean only reading theory, although that is of paramount importance too. It also means organic education through organizing, be it understandings of legal frameworks, public relations, basic medical knowledge, and computer know-how. The reason theory is important is because it is a guide to action. It is what allows us to properly understand the world around us and how to go about critiquing and, more importantly, changing it. If you're a new Marxist and want some advice on what you should be doing education-wise, take a look at this video here. If you'd like to get a basic reading list on socialism, take a look at this video here. The point of educating yourself in the theory is to be able to develop your criticisms of capitalism and to confidently and accurately share your understanding with your community and those around you. This, combined with direct action, is what builds class consciousness, the very first block towards abolishing capitalism. With that said, what about the other sort of education? Theory can be done on your own, or in groups, which is highly recommended, but interpersonal communication skills, how to handle conflict, basic cooperative and democratic participation, accurately finding a solution to a problem found through said cooperative effort, all this is something that can only really be done in groups. Finally, professional organizations tend to grow the, let's say, more boring but still very necessary stuff as well. From administrative skills and technical organization of transport groups, etc., to things like video editing and Photoshop skills or creative writing in the forms of pamphlets or seminars, and more. 5. Mutual aid and basic organizing. With all the introductory stuff out of the way, let's get more concrete. Firstly, what is mutual aid? Mutual aid is collective coordination to meet each other's needs. We fundamentally understand that the systems we have in place are not going to meet those needs, and the aim of mutual aid projects is to develop this point. It's to set up alternative sources of that which your community is in need of, be it medical attention or housing or whatever else, accompanied by constant education, explaining why is it that their needs aren't being met in the first place. The best example that comes to mind, at least for the United States and other Western countries, is that of the Black Panthers. A dedicated Marxist group, they saw the direct injustices being dealt to their own African American communities, educated themselves with the relevant theory, and got to work developing a free children's breakfast program, community protection, free medical clinics and ambulance rides, aid to the elderly and infirm when they run errands, educational initiatives, and much more. Notice, they not only provided what their communities needed and weren't being provided in the first place, but also were delivering a clear and scathing criticism of the capitalist system and systemic racism in the US. To use an old Sufi adage, they not only fed the stomach, but the mind too. This process of educating those who benefited from the mutual aid projects of the Black Panthers instilled in those communities a drive for change, which is what made the Black Panthers so successful in the eyes of the working class, and so dangerous in the eyes of the ruling class. On a side note, the police, being the radiantly positive organization that it is, broke into the church storing the food for the Black Panther free breakfast program and destroyed it, mostly by urinating and stepping on it, just in case you ever doubted whose side they're on. We need to make something abundantly clear. Mutual aid is not charity. In times of crisis, the ruling class pushes very safe, sanitized, and fairly ineffective organizations revolving around charity, in which the decisions on what is needed, how much, where, and to whom are completely disconnected from the people who are most affected by them. These institutions aren't intended to get at the root cause of whatever the issue is, be it poverty or homelessness or drug abuse or whatever else. Instead, it's designed as a pretty PR game for the rich and influential to beautify themselves and their ever-so-generous philanthropy, without ever even attempting to correct the issue at hand. It's symptomatic treatment, not a cure, and it's intended to make humane a system that is inherently inhumane. Side note, the question of security is very important, but sadly can't be discussed at the present time. Some quick points are community defense, community patrolling, basic security knowledge, both armed and unarmed methods of self-defense, first aid, and legal knowledge. You should keep all this in mind, and the internet is your best friend. 6. The pitfalls of organizing. This topic deserves a video of its own, really, but there's no harm in briefly touching on it here. One of the main pitfalls is lifestyleism. Capitalism commodifies everything, and in today's world, even being woke, a performative demonstration of how in tune you are with an understanding of systemic bias against race, or sex, or class, or gender, exists as something right next to your favorite type of music. The liberation of us, the vast majority of humanity, isn't something to add onto a Twitter bio and that's that. The necessary serious follow-up on those convictions is required, otherwise it's a stale and impotent opinion that dies as soon as it's invoked. Another common pitfall is one of a lack of focus, rigid unquestionable hierarchies, and secrecy within the organization. In some cases, the material conditions of the moment demand secrecy. Important addresses or the starting point of some revolutionary action of some kind are relevant examples. In direct community organizing in a non-revolutionary moment, though, it's not only counterproductive but also harmful. Decision-making should be inclusive, clear, sympathetic, and open to suggestion or influence from the relevant community you're working in. There shouldn't be any central group or clique that's undemocratically chosen, which decides how everything works and will be organized. Not only does this set this one group out for burnout, but also directly harms our aims by dividing the organization into an us and them, tiering the core and essentially factionalizing or otherwise dissolving the organization in the process. A related point is paternalism, elitism, overpromising, and underdelivering. These organizations are educational institutions for those activists that take part, and the people are the professors. You're not graciously descending from the heavens to help them, you're building a mutually beneficial and cooperative movement aimed at growing the impetus for the abolishment of capitalism. The overpromising and underdelivering part is self-explanatory, and why proper accounting with checks and balances being in place are of paramount importance. Transparency, with group finances, democratic participation, and how best these funds should be used, with clear communication along all lines can prevent potentially disastrous outcomes. Equally, the opposite is also an issue. Being too tight-fisted with funds or resources and having a scarcity mindset, be it in money or time or labor or whatever else, can inhibit the positive influence of the organization, cultivating a cold and very pragmatic approach that distances us from the community that we're trying to reach in the first place. This is why I highlighted those more boring aspects earlier, such as legal knowledge and administrative practice. Many of these common issues can be corrected through solid accounting and transparency. This is only a small section, and there are many more we can talk about, but we can move on to the next point for now. 7. The co-option of progressive movements. The ruling class cares very little for the daily suffering of those underneath them, normally. I say normally because this balance is disrupted when a crisis occurs. Systems break down and are either out completely or in the process of being put back together. This exacerbates the daily inequalities and pulls the curtain back, so to speak. It is our job to expose these injustices and couple them with an appropriate analysis so that the temporary flare of people's anger and sense to contribute isn't lost after things calm down again. The ruling class hates crises not only because they expose setting inequalities, but also because they disrupt the status quo of surplus extraction and profit-making, causing them to push the capitalist state to smooth all of this out as soon as possible so that normal can return. Most of all, it shows that the things you want and fight for, things like public transport, or healthcare, rent freezes or reductions, freezes on loan payments, with student loans being the most famous example that comes to mind, and much more are definitely possible. Before the crisis, they tell you they're not. During the crisis, all of a sudden the government rolls out temporary forms of the very things they told you were impossible. The current pandemic is an excellent example of this, with eviction moratoriums, increased unemployment benefits and income support, free public transit, suspensions of student loan payments, and more. This is in no way all-encompassing or even adequate, but it shows that it is possible, given the right sort of impulse. Mutual aid, direct organizing, and a proper political program can build that impulse. Keep in mind, though, successful growing movements face two responses from the powers that be. Either they are mercilessly harassed until they are crushed, like the Black Panthers were, or the government and corporations and the media catches on and tries to extend a friendly gesture, let's call it. They try to bring them into a sanitized fold, framing them as heroic volunteers helping impoverished communities, and slowly, bit by bit, making them part of the system, in tandem with charities and ineffective and defunded government programs and corporate initiatives. Eventually, these politicians and philanthropists begin associating and even attempting to direct such groups with results that you may expect. Remember, the reason these organizations exist is to show the failures of capitalism, to advocate for the abolishing of capitalism, and to build dual power in preparation of such an event. The aid that is extended in cooperation with various communities is to show that not only is a new world possible, but also why we want a new world, how we can achieve it, and how we can do it on our own terms as a class. We should never lose sight of our fundamental end goal. In times of crisis, we win concessions, but these are only as strong and lasting as the mobilizations that made them necessary. The only true change that can be maintained is by revolution. For a deeper dive into the pitfalls of solely reformism, check out this video I made here. 8. Concrete steps. What can we do immediately? This may sound a little silly, but talk. Talk to your family, your friends, your coworkers. Work within your community and bring together like-minded people. Join existing organizations if they're around, aid in currently existing mutual aid groups, and try to get involved in the organizing activity. Try to bring forth a simple-to-understand yet sharp criticism of capitalism. This is where the importance of educating yourself shines. You don't even need to mention socialism at first. It's enough to sow the seeds of doubt and to subsequently follow up when your community or those around you are more ready. Always relate your criticism of capitalism to people's direct issues. Lack of employment and healthcare, infrastructure, or even very specific material issues people face. Always properly analyze them and turn them into a quick, concise, and appreciated bit of knowledge to share about the failings of the current government and the capitalist system. The most fundamental point is to always be kind, patient, sympathetic, and non-combative. It doesn't matter how good your arguments sound or how much your organization has helped. If people feel you're arrogant, stubborn, inattentive, or just plain rude, a smile, a brisk, empathetic discussion, and an appreciation of others' perspectives, even if they're wrong, goes much farther than the debate bro facts and logic approach. Be kind, patient, and discuss with empathy. That's how we get people on our side. If you do your job right and convey the message appropriately, there's no way they'll reject you, as the things we want are directly in their and our interests. Now, suppose you have a bunch of people together. You're motivated, dedicated, educated, and ready to help. What's the next step? Your best bet is to start small. After your attempts at forming a basic political program, you'll need to find out what exactly is needed by your community. How exactly do you find this out, though? 9. Democratic centralism and the mass line. The correct questions need to be asked. How are correct ideas reached? How do we know we are actually meeting the needs of our communities? What steps should be taken to reach a correct analysis and a solid political program? All of these questions are answered by the Chinese revolutionary experience and their application of the mass line. What is the mass line, though? Let's quote Mao and see what he has to say.
All correct leadership is necessarily from the masses to the masses. This means take the ideas of the masses, scattered and unsystematic ideas, and concentrate them. Through study, turn them into concentrated and systematic ideas. Then go to the masses and propagate and explain these ideas until the masses embrace them as their own, hold fast to them, and translate them into action, and test the correctness of these ideas in such action. Then, once again, concentrate ideas from the masses, and once again go to the masses so that the ideas are persevered in and carried through. And so on, over and over again in an endless spiral, with the ideas becoming more correct, more vital, and richer each time. Such is the Marxist theory of knowledge.
This is the kernel of correct political approach. Discuss, identify the scattered and unclear grievances of the community you're attempting to reach, formulate and concentrate those ideas and bring them back to that community. Through a constant cycle of collaborative corrections and modifications, the correct conclusions and phases of action can be reached. Where does democratic centralism fall into all of this? What is it, exactly? Well, it's the Leninist idea of diversity in discussion and unity in action. You can have a vibrant democratic atmosphere once proposals are being put forward and discussed, but once a democratic consensus is reached on a decision, everyone, including those that don't necessarily agree with said democratic consensus, should abide by and follow through with the decision of the majority. In this way, we can ensure that our efforts are targeted, full-bodied, and successful. Otherwise, we leave room for fragmentation, factionalism, and a castration of the main push of the organization. We need to ensure that the limited resources that we do have, be it labor or money or whatever else, aren't needlessly wasted because of weak and scattered pushes in all directions. Now, of course, this isn't the correct approach in absolutely 100% of cases, and I again refer you to a proper analysis of your material conditions. 10. The role of the individual. It's always good to remember that different people have different capacities. Some can be background figures, while others foreground. Some are comfortable and enjoy speaking publicly, others like to be more reserved. Socialism is an inclusive movement, and not everyone needs to be in the thick of it, organizing strikes and battling it out with the repressive forces of the state or whatever. If you're the type that dislikes large gatherings or gets anxious with burdens of administration or logistical work, that's equally fine. Whatever you can contribute, be it writing or art or even simple packaging work, for example in grocery drives, is appreciated and directly contributes to the movement. With that said, I think everyone should try their hand in administrative work. It's a lot easier than it sounds, I promise you. One entry point that I think most could find easy to do, find personally fulfilling, and not too burdensome is gardening. In particular, community gardens for growing food. There are endless videos and books on the topic, and meeting at least part of your community's grocery needs for free is one of the quickest ways to winning their trust and getting them involved as well. This, combined with community volunteers and political education, is one of many seeds, pardon the pun, that can germinate into larger organizations. This just so happens to be a fairly tame and cheap introductory point, and that's intentional. With more volunteers, basic daycare facilities to working parents can be provided. Having the assistance of some nurses and doctors that are willing to donate their time, even basic forms of healthcare could be provided, too. With sufficient growth, you can even expand to developing collective housing units. I'm not saying luxury condos, but something small you can provide to the homeless in your area. I'm not sure about you, but where I'm from, concrete, beams, and piping material is very cheap. If that's not possible, then take a look at whatever cheap rundown or abandoned structure in your area you can get a hold of, refurbish it, and turn it into housing. Hold on, why the sudden jump to rudimentary housing, you ask? Well, the question of the lumpenproletariat cannot be ignored. In the US, the homeless are the largest subsection of America's lumpenproletariat. For example, unemployed and stripped of their humanity, under capitalism they're just cast aside to rot, essentially. In an equal and democratically arranged society, these people have so much to contribute and are willing to. Knowing this, they can be one of the greatest sources of revolutionary commitment when the time comes. These community gardens, basic housing blocks, organizational tasks, etc. are all avenues for reincorporating them into your community. Not only would working with them restore their dignity, but would also give a form of productive employment to people who are more than willing to contribute if given the chance. This isn't pity or self-serving charity. This is a recognition of our condition in theirs. All of this begins with a conversation and a few seeds in some pots. The only thing you need is action. 11. Tasks of the Western left. A lot of what I've said here has been of universal applicability, but here's one point I'd like to extend to the Western, and specifically American left. It should go without saying that the number one global threat to leftist movements worldwide is the American imperial machine. Be it through sanctions, diplomatic and material support of reactionary forces, or outright invasion, the US has killed more revolutionary movements in their cradle than any other country. This means that, as American, and other NATO ally nation leftists, a sacred duty falls on your shoulders. To put it concretely, resisting American imperialism internally by preventing the US government from exercising its imperial ambitions abroad, and directly supporting those movements abroad, will open up possibilities not before known to the American left. This is all well and good, but how do we do this? Simple. You form anti-war organizations, and you turn all existing mutual aid or other organizations into anti-war organizations as well. You can still do all your regular work, but you can associate and broaden your criticism by involving anti-imperialism as well. The vast majority of the American and other NATO ally nation working classes do not benefit from these wars. In fact, just the opposite. Resisting American oppression abroad is resisting American oppression within. When it comes to educating your fellow countrymen on this, you have to remember that many may have the perspective of liberals, a worldview that is thoroughly centered on the "a few bad apples" analysis. They seem to be unable of grasping that some institutions are simply made to perpetuate and reproduce what we'd want to morally condemn, be it police violence or military atrocities or economic practices under capitalism. Not because they're evil, but because it serves certain class interests and maintains the status quo, or raises profits. Moralism plays no part here. That doesn't mean appealing to the liberals' moral sense is useless, though. In my opinion, it's a great first step. Towards that point, I can recommend two works, Killing Hope by William Blum and The Triumph of Evil by Austin Murphy. Read these two works, discuss them with your communities, and share that knowledge. Work towards changing the perception of the US military and US foreign policy and US action worldwide. I get that must be very difficult in such a highly militarized country, but your work now, if successful, will save countless lives down the road. Related actions can be educating yourself and others on movements abroad, raising money and materiel for them, whatever they require or advertise through their above-ground organizations, like in, for example, the Philippines, protesting US actions against them, and even sabotage if the movement within your country is mature enough. The Black Panthers directly supported countless movements abroad, and in turn got support as well. Conclusion. This may have been an unnecessarily long video, but I hope it helps give at least a general picture of our approach. This isn't a step-by-step guide to revolution, but more of a primer to the very first blocks you can put in place. If you enjoy what I do, then please consider supporting me on Patreon. It really does help. I'd like to thank my patrons, so thank you too. Candace, Get Organized Starling, what a lovely and relevant name. Caspian, Ted, Philip Shamus, Khadija, Chris Dracker, Boatface Mick Potemkinhead, Hoja Enjoyer, Zustra, Henry Corton, Lucas Gabrincorn, Stephen Abreu, Sean McIntyre, Sven Yeaman, Dylan Grayson, Rowan Ancom Tree of Knowledge, Jakarta99, Luca, Osmosis Jones, Randy Randerson, Zachary, Drago Leaf, Mole Trooper, Philip Popovich, Lucas R, Sam George, Fanta, Red XT, Renzo Espinoza, Max McNally, Jared Hobbs, Gobbler67, Thomas Kelly, Communism Turns Me On, Cale Morrison, Riley Cooper, Travis Armstrong, Hayan Ahmadi, Caspian, Brobo, Pius Sodomite. These names, man. Matthew Nevish, Beginner Mind, and A.O. Hillary. Thanks for watching.